Hey guys, Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer. We talk about all things music. And today, we're going to be counting down the top 10 heavy metal songs about depression. This video is a tribute to TREVOR STRNAD of the Black Dahlia murder, who passed away due to suicide on May 11th, 2022. TREVOR was described by those who knew him as a likable, charismatic, and all-around great guy with a passion for extreme music. In honor of him, I decided to make a list of metal songs about depression, with a variety of metal genres being shown. Trigger warning, I will be talking about suicide a lot in this video, so if you don't want to hear about that, maybe don't watch this video. And if you are feeling suicidal and like you can't take it anymore, call this number. Talk to someone. Trust me, as someone who's been suicidal, being open about your feelings really helps. Okay. With that out of the way, let's get started with number 1, Dark Insanity by Arch Enemy. Even though I'm talking about these particular songs in alphabetical order by artist, I still find it appropriate that I'm talking about Arch Enemy first, since they're in the same subgenre of metal as the Black Dahlia murder, that being melodic death metal. Melodic death metal has been one of my favorite subgenres of metal ever since I got into metal, let's say. Yeah. And even though Black Earth is not one of my favorite melodic death metal albums, or even one of my favorite Arch Enemy albums, I still really enjoy it. Mostly due to just how beautiful and poetic the songwriting is. This album came out before Arch Enemy hired Angelo Agasso and became known as the female-fronted anarchist metal band. Instead, they have a male singer talking about all the suffering that he's experienced and just not being happy. It's very angsty and nihilistic, yet also kind of beautiful at the same time. And while I've heard some mixed opinions on vocalist Johan Leva's vocals, you have to admit, you can definitely hear the pain in his voice, at least a little. The song Dark Insanity is just one example. But the reason I chose it over the other songs on here is because of the first verse. Weak and sick I crawl in the dust of past mistakes, leaving for the darkness of tears and cold heartaches. Suffer in this grief of forever burning hate, the ashes of my life by the torment you create. I can relate to a lot of what he just said there, especially the part about crawling in the dust of past mistakes. I've done a lot of terrible things in my life, mostly due to a mix of anger management issues, being mildly autistic and not understanding social rules as a result, and also trauma. And let's just say that, yeah, there are times when I definitely feel like I'm just can't deal with it. It doesn't exactly help my self-esteem, which in turn makes my depression worse. So yeah, this song is relatable. Check it out. Okay, so that first song was pretty poetic and deep, but how about something a little more straightforward for our next entry? Number 2, Carnifex, Dark Days. Carnifex has always always been a pretty depressing band. The name of this album is Die Without Hope, for God's sake. And this song, Dark Days, reflects that perfectly. Basically being a song about a guy who decides he can't take it anymore and ends up killing himself. And I think it can best be summed up in this line. We all have dark days. For me, the darkness stays. I feel like a lot of people can relate to that, especially if they have depression. And what I love about this song is that it is very straightforward and simple and easy to understand, which in turn makes it a lot easier to relate to. One would think that a brutal genre like deathcore would be bad at conveying vulnerability, but this song proves that wrong, and the more atmospheric elements just make it even better. But if you want a song that's all atmosphere and emotion, number 3, Daylight Misery by Draconian. Ah yes, doom metal. The most depressing of the metal subgenres. Now, for those of you who don't know, in addition to listening to metal, I also listen to a whole bunch of other genres, including some that aren't exactly popular with a lot of metalheads. And one of those genres that I happen to like is alternative pop, at least to some extent. And one of the alternative pop bands I like is 21 Pilots. I bring this up because this song has always kind of struck me as an inverse 21 Pilots song. Like, 21 Pilots, when they talk about depression, they talk about how it gets worse at night. This song, meanwhile, is about how depression can get worse during the day. And yeah, both of these phenomenons are very common among people with depression, for those of you who don't know. And yeah. And I actually know people who fit both of these examples. For me, it gets worse at night, but when my mom was young and had to deal with it, it got worse in the morning for her. I think this feeling can be aptly summed up in these lines. Innocence raped in the sunrise, and I watch how the beauty dies. Another day will go astray, another tear in this life so gray. If you ever saw me smile, you should know I felt sick inside. That last part is especially relatable because how many depressed people out there like to pretend to be happy, even though deep down they're feeling absolutely miserable and like they want to end it all. They do this because they're worried about being judged, or because they don't think that, or because they judge themselves. But yeah, a lot of depressed people hide their emotions. But yeah. But if you want something a bit more melodic, number 4, Dream Theater, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. I want you to know I'd die for that moment. 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence by Dream Theater is an interesting case. Basically, this song is divided into 6 parts, or actually more than that, but it deals with 6 different mental illnesses, including postpartum depression. For those of you who don't know, postpartum depression is depression that occurs in some women after they've had a baby. And while I've never known anyone who's dealt with this, the part of the song that talks about it is still a gut punch, especially with how powerfully the line, "I'm just a poor girl afraid of this cruel world," is sung. Yeah. And interestingly enough, this is actually the softest part of the piece, and yet it's still the biggest emotional gut punch of the bunch. Although Dream Theater vocalist James Labrie or Labrie, or however you say that, has obviously never been through this himself, you can tell he feels deeply for these people. And even though this song is 42 minutes, I recommend all of you check it out. It's well worth sitting through if you have the time. Especially with that ending where they talk about how we should be more accepting towards people with mental illnesses such as postpartum depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, autism, dissociative identity disorder, and PTSD. Great song. Up next is number 5, Coming Undone by Core. Nu metal has a number of songs about depression, and which makes sense considering it's kind of branded as one of those angsty white boy genres. The song I'm talking about today, Coming Undone, for just an example, is a song about feeling hopeless and like you could come undone at any moment after going through a lifetime of trauma. And I think this can be best summed up with the line, "Since I was young, I tasted sorrow on my tongue," and also, "That's right, trigger between my eyes, please strike, make it quick now." This isn't the only Korn song that tackles these themes, so if you like this song, check out some more from them. I think you'll find them to be a pretty relatable band. And while we're on the topic of mainstream metal bands, number 6, Metallica, Fade to Black. Metallica's Fade to Black is easily the most famous metal song about depression. I couldn't make this list if I didn't include it. And it's also appropriate because if you look right here, you'll find that I actually have Ride the Lightning. This song describes a guy who's been dealing with depression for a long time, and he eventually decides he can't take it anymore and ends up killing himself. The line I find most relatable here is, "No one but me can save myself, but it's too late." I imagine this must have been pretty hard-hitting when it came out in the 80s. After all, not a lot of people were talking about mental health back then. So, congratulations to the tough guy thrash metal guys, Metallica, for having the guts to release something like this. I'm sure it helped a lot of people. Now for number 7, Senses Fail, Carry the Weight.
But now I believe.
Metalcore is another genre of metal that's stereotyped as music for angsty teenagers. So, I guess it's no surprise that a decent number of songs in this genre are about depression. Senses Fail aren't normally a metal band, they normally fall into post-hardcore territory, but they do have 2 metalcore albums, those being Renaissance and Pull the Thorns from Your Heart. This song is from the latter, and it is, no joke, one of my favorite songs of all time. Yes, I know I'm about to get my metalhead card revoked. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, vocalist Buddy Nielsen has been dealing with depression since pretty much the day Senses Fail became a band, at the very least. He's never been shy about talking about it on record, but on his 5th album, Renaissance, the band's style switched up and the lyrics became a bit more hopeful, which continued on the next album, Pull the Thorns from Your Heart. And on this song, Carry the Weight, Buddy Nielsen talks about how he used to want to die, but now he doesn't because he finally found happiness, even though he's not fully healed yet. I hope that one day I can get to a place where I no longer want to die, and I can just sit there and listen to this song and feel proud of myself, and I hope the same for all of you. Great job, buddy. And now, if you want something a little bit more extreme, however, number 8, Submit to Self-Destruction by Shining. Black metal is the only subgenre of metal that has an entire subsection dedicated to depression and suicide. That subsection is called DSBM, or Depressive Suicidal Black Metal. Shining are pioneers in this subgenre, which makes sense since their vocalist actually sounds like he's in pain. What I love about this song is that the narrator actually implies that he's done something sinful in his life. That basically means that if he kills himself, he'll end up in hell. But at this point, he's so depressed that he doesn't even care. That is weirdly relatable and also incredibly deep. As someone who's done my fair share of terrible things, like I said, I feel that way sometimes, not gonna lie. But anyway, if you want a song that's a bit less extreme, number 9, Suicide by My Side by Sirenia. Here we have a female-fronted power metal band. However, while most power metal is all about unicorns and dragons and stuff, this song is about being abused to the point of wanting to die and actually going through with it. It's bleak, to say the least, even though the instrumentation still sounds like bright, happy power metal. Yeah, and like I said, this song also includes some commentary on domestic abuse. When you realize that the sample at the beginning is taken from a movie about Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols and him dealing with his toxic girlfriend. So yeah, if you think power metal is all sunshine and rainbows, check this song out. It may just change your mind. Now for number 10, Sirenia, Absent Without Leave. Anyone who knows me knows I love symphonic metal. What you might not know is that this song basically helped me through one of my darkest times in my life, when I was 14 years old and experienced depression for the first time. This song was just so relatable, especially the line, "Life keeps on growing colder year by year with a winter heart and my frozen tears." Yeah, at the time, my mom had just gotten out of a mental hospital due to schizophrenia, and I'd been going through some other things too. So it really did feel like life was getting colder year by year. It started to get better as of late, but at the time, I just thought it was going to get worse and worse forever. I'm still not quite where I want to be, but at least I'm getting closer. And when I feel like ending it all, I remind myself of that. And these songs help. And hopefully they'll help anyone who's dealing with depression as well. And also, R.I.P. Trevor Sternad, again. And that's my video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I'm Morgan the Rebellious Reviewer, and I'm out.